Our mother turned 85 this year, and for her birthday decided to give us kids a birthday present, which was a trip to Poland to see our roots. We landed within 45 minutes of each other, went to our Airbnb, and then bopped around Warsaw for the rest of the afternoon. On the 10th, our guide Tomasz met us and led us around Poland for 10 days, starting with the Poland Museum in Warsaw. We went to the Chopin Park, and Tomasz showed us around the Warsaw ghetto, and with his knowledge of history, not only of Poland but also the Jewish plight, he was able to inform us of many, many terrible but very interesting things.
It's a country United States and Great Britain.
On the afternoon of the second day of our trip, Tomasz drove us from Warsaw down to Krakow, where we saw Jewish cemeteries, some interesting castles, and Tomasz even took us to go to his house outside of Krakow that he and his wife had just built. It was very interesting to go inside and to meet not only his wife but his two children.
Enjoyed him so much.
The morning of day 4, we toured Krakow, which included a visit out to Wawel Royal Castle, and standing in the courtyard there. We also went out to the university section of town and visited there where Tomasz actually graduated. We went out to the Vistula River, toured the old town square, including one of the basilicas there, which is interesting because 97% of all Poles are Catholic. Of course, we had to have lunch before we headed out towards Auschwitz, visited a monastery on the way, but the purpose of the trip was to go see Pope John Paul II's church, which is the minor basilica of the Presentation of the Blessed Virgin Mary. We attended Mass there and had a very good time. That evening we went to a Polish supper and folk dance and had a great time. The morning of the 5th day, we toured the oldest Jewish synagogue in Krakow. That was actually featured in Schindler's List. And then we headed out to Auschwitz, and that was extremely disturbing. I've been to other concentration camps before, including Dachau in Germany. What struck me about Auschwitz and Birkenau was the sheer volume that we're dealing with. I mean, the canisters of Zyklon B and the luggage of the people that were all exterminated here. What actually broke me up most was looking at the hair and the shoes, and this just represents just a small fraction of the people who were killed here at this death camp. Auschwitz actually consists of 4 different camps, including Birkenau, which happened to be one of the largest concentration camps, and then death camps in World War II, with hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people coming through and never leaving. Again, the sheer volume, the sheer size, the sheer magnitude of the killing that went on here, including things like potties, that it was just truly astounding and depressing. We walked to the back of the camp where they had the death camp, and Tomasz had notified us that we're actually walking now on a meter of ashes, and you have to wonder what it takes to, how many bodies it takes to create a meter of ashes. We returned to Krakow that evening and felt a little more sober and somber. Kind of a somber meal. The morning of day 6, we went to the Divine Mercy Sanctuary and Shrine and attended Mass. Enjoyed it very much because the Divine Mercy Sanctuary is the sanctuary for Saint Sister Faustina, who happens to be a sister church of the church in Sauk Center, the St. Paul's Church in Sauk Center, Minnesota. And from there we drove to Czestochowa and saw the Black Madonna. From Czestochowa, we drove northwest about 4.5 hours to Złotów, and on the way we stopped off at an old medieval town called Torun. Torun actually happens to be the birthplace of Copernicus. And then we finished up by driving the rest of the way to Złotów because we had an exciting weekend to spend with relatives who we haven't seen in about 115 years. So let me see if I can explain this. First, of course, there's my 2 sisters, myself, and then we have a mom. Well, her mom is Sally Kroll, who had a dad, Felix Kroll, who came over from Poland, actually it was Germany at the time, and he had a dad, Martin. We also knew that there were other relatives around. We were given some letters and discovered that we have a cousin of sorts, Lodi, who is located in Canada. My sister Teresa, located Lodi in Canada, found out from Lodi that she's got a mother, Maria, and a grandmother, Anna, who came from Germany, and her dad is Jan Kroll. Jan and Felix are brothers because they have the same dad, Martin. That makes Anna and Sally first cousins, and Maria and my mom, Lorraine, second cousins, which makes Lodi and us kids third cousins. Yodia has 2 sisters, Jolanta and Jadwiga, who live in Poland, and that's who we're going to visit. But wait, there's more. I did a search on Facebook for anybody with the last name of Kroll who lived in Swiat, Poland, and I found Hanush. Well, Janusz's great-grandfather is Szczepan, who happens to be brothers with Jan and Felix, making us third cousins. While Janusz works in Holland, he lives with his sister Lucia in Swiat when he's here. More about Lucia and Hanusz in a bit, but first we're going to meet up with Jadwiga and her family. What a greeting we got from Jadwiga, her husband Zibzig, their son Damien, and his wife and son. We had great desserts and coffee at their apartment in Złotów. We also got to meet with Helen, who is their aunt, and started looking at pictures, and which is one thing led to another, and we had such a great time. We even had the chance to Skype Lodi from Canada, so tremendous amount of fun, and that was just the morning. That was just the beginning.
Poetic Polish language. Just on the language, then later the name changed into Helena.
Imię służbowe,
But she
tak.
still feels like Helcia, not like
A z
Helena.
domu to taka mała Helcia.
She still feels like a little Helcia more.
Jak ktoś mówi
Helena.
Helcia na mnie, to ja widzę całe pokolenie Kruszkich, Grzybowskich, Zaborowskich, Gromadno, wszystkich koło siebie.
When somebody's using the name Helcia on me, I
Oni
know
mnie
that he's
wychowywali.
somebody from the family, and it's somebody that is bringing me the memory of Kruszka and all those
Mańka,
places that we're
tak
coming from.
dobrze, że wróciły te czasy
20
naszych
lat
dziadów.
temu.
A ja mogłam tutaj mieć.
58. O, ciociu w moim wieku byłaś.
So she was 58.
Gdzieś koło tego.
Yadzie is also
Nie,
58.
chyba było gdzieś 59, córeczka.
Poetic Polish language. So she's calling, so it's
What a great morning it was, and it was just the beginning. We got into our vehicles and headed out to Jadwiga's school. She showed us where she is a school teacher, and then we went over to Swiat.
I to pokażę. No i widocznie się nie odezwała, nie dzwoniła i nie wiem,
this
czy
French boy-
oddarła, czy
A kiedy to było? 10 lat temu?
4 lata temu.
4 lata temu. So about 4 years ago, somebody contacted me from France, and there was a woman that was actually the family member of this Lucian brother. That
Again, we had wonderful food and drinks with Janusz and Lucia, and also with their cousin Anna, and got to see across the street from Lucia's house is the old homestead. This is where Felix and Szczepan and Janusz were all born and raised. And this is the house from which our great-grandfather Felix left.
To jest tylko aktualna, stary bufet.
Teraz on mieszka na wsi.
Drewnie to napisze numer.
This is
No
Jan
właśnie,
Król.
właśnie.
This is Jan Król.
Ja to tak.
A to jest
Przepraszam.
Marta Zaborowska, czyli jej mama. I ta ciocia to jest ta, co tam Helcia, co jest u
No,
nas w
ja
domu.
teraz będę może wie tak trochę
Jak była
więcej do
młoda.
tego przykładać wagi, bo tak.
To Helcie jest po lewej?
To jest ta Helcia, tak. po lewej.
Tak, no.
I na zdjęciu bym napisał.
Ja to tak, no.
Właśnie, teraz
Jak
patrzę,
w komputerze zrobię, to można by normalnie
dlaczego my tych gielów dobrych nie przyjęliśmy?
O,
No właśnie, patrzę na moje ciocie.
niepotrzebna skromność, także bez przesady.
Ja to zawsze się śmieję.
The question was,
Proszę,
the question is,
proszę usiądź, ja pokażę.
And there to help us go through the pictures was Anna's brother Francis, who is now living in the house. And there are a lot of pictures, including this one of Martin. And we have a picture of Felix and Martha. I suspect that was from the United States, however. But there were many other pictures that we spent over an hour going through.
A nie, to tej cioci ze
For lunch, we went back into Złota to Dom Polski restaurant for some traditional Polish food. Then we met up with Janusz, who took us around to several of his ancestors' graveyards, where he's tending graves. Anna's brother. And then we went back into Złota to look for more ancestors, including Jadwiga's great-grandmother and grandfather's grave. By now we're hugging cousins. We enjoyed the rest of the afternoon walking around Złota and seeing some of the various sites before we went back out to Lucia's and Janusz's house for some dinner. We got some wonderful gifts from everybody.
the young couple.
Yes.
Bless us, O Lord, in these thy gifts which we are about to receive from thy bounty through Christ our Lord. Amen. And thanks for all thy benefits, Almighty God, who lives and reigns forever. Amen. And Lord, we różności, także mamy.
What a wonderful meal we had. The food was great, the drinks were great, but the friendliness, the warmth was just beyond anything we could have imagined. The next morning we went down to the train station at Złotów, and while we don't have records, this is probably the train station where Felix, his wife Martha, and their family at the time left June 6th in 1905 to Quebec, Canada.
The cargo.
Sure, I like this.
The bites and they are picking mushrooms.
Looking like when they
After driving the back roads around Swiat, we returned back to Zlotov to go to the church where our great-grandfather Felix and his wife Martha were probably married.
Please remember.
After Mass, we said goodbye to Janusz and his girlfriend, and we certainly hope to see them again soon. From there, Jadwiga took us to visit more grave sites, this time of her side of the family. We drove out to visit Jadwiga's cousins, who had lots of pictures for us, and we were warmly greeted. One of the pictures was of our great-grandfather's family, and it's probably taken from the United States because Sally here, the baby, was born in the United States, and here she looks to be about less than a year. So probably in about 1906 this picture was taken. And here you can see the young Felix and Martha and the not so young Felix and Martha. And here's a picture of the old homestead when it was actually new. Here seems to be a big family gathering of some sorts. And here is our great aunt Pelagia and a great grandmother Martha. After leaving Jadwiga's cousins and visiting some grave sites, Jadwiga said we need to go one more place to visit some additional cousins. There waiting in the road for us were about 10 people, all of them related to us.
Michała żona. I chodzisz, to miejsce jeszcze jest źle ustawione, wiesz? A twój zrobiłam.
What a wonderful day. What a wonderful weekend. Thank you, Jadwiga and Janusz, for organizing everything. It was so great to get together with cousins we haven't seen in 115 years, and we're exhausted. On day 9, we left Zlotov and drove south about 400 kilometers to Wroclaw. We stopped along the way and visited some sites, and when we got to Wroclaw we did a little touring and bought some flowers because we wanted to meet up with Jadwiga's sister, our cousin Jolanta, and so we met up with her and some friends in town square, and with all the relatives we met, it was nothing but warmth. On day 10, we met up with a local expert guide who gave us a tour of Wroclaw. We got to see a lot of the interesting sites. We also got to do a little bit of shopping. And one of the things we got to see were all these little gnomes, and that's what Wroclaw is known for all over the place. And sometimes there are bigger gnomes, and there are 3 of them right there. Of course, we had the ubiquitous beer, and I think Chrissy probably had her schnapps before we headed over to the Locks of Love bridge, and we bought a lock and put our names on it, and knowing that we will be coming back at some point in the future. We drove out to Falkowicz, which is a small 150-person town, and in hopes of finding Worzekas. This is where my mom's father's side of the family would be coming from. And interestingly enough, the first person we ran into was a Worzeka, and the only one in town who was Worzeka. She had the keys to the church and was able to let us in and show us around. And so we got to spend a little bit of time with her in this beautiful church, which is probably where my grandfather's family were born, got married, got baptized, died, etc. When we went into the graveyard, we looked for Worzekas and only found a few Worzekas, found lots of Krolls, but went back across the street over to her family's residence and took some pictures and took some information down about the family. Very enjoyable, again, very warm welcome. We found another grave site after leaving Falkowitz and decided to poke around there a little bit before we got to our hotel. It's not really a hotel. It was called the Buffalo Ranch, and it was pretty much as primitive as you could get, and we thoroughly enjoyed it. So kind of saluted our time in Poland, because after this we were going to be heading back to Warsaw and getting ready for our trip back home. On day 11 we had one stop to make before we headed back to Warsaw, and that was the Opole Registry. Unlike the Kroll side of the family, where we're able to only go back to our second great-grandfather, with the Worzeka side we were able to go back to Wallentin, our fourth great-grandfather. And here's a record of Wallentin and his first daughter Maria, born in Opole area, specifically Falkowitz. Of course, we also had to have a dinner before we left, and we had to get a lesson from Tomasz in Polish.
All right. Okay. Can you do this while you're driving? I'll just say it.
Yeah, of course.
Okay, tell
It's
me.
very easy. It's chrząszcz brzmi w trzcinie, w Strzebrzeszynie.
And that means?
That means a little bug sitting in the high grass next to the city called Szczebrzeszyn.
Okay, thank you.
It's one of the most useful Polish phrases.
Tomasz took us to the train station in Katowice, where we boarded the train to Warsaw. It was a great time with you, Tomasz. Thank you very much for everything that you provided to us. What a great trip we had. Day 12 was our last day in Poland. We spent the morning walking around Warsaw, including touring the Palace of Culture and Science, which included going up the tower to overlook the city one more time before heading to Chopin Airport, where we played a game of 500 and drank a beer and hugged each other goodbye. Thanks, Mom, for a wonderful visit. Thanks, sisters. Had a ball with you guys. Tomasz, couldn't have done it without you. This was special. And to our cousins and our new friends, thank you.